To celebrate the start of the season, we've teamed up with Sky Bet. Sky Bet understands the emotional roller coaster that's being a football fan. It will lift you up, break you down, and stitch you back together with hope. But we'll do it all again next week, because for all the pain of a looming relegation or missed penalty, there's nothing quite like the absolute scenes of a last-minute winner. Not for everyone, for the fans. Sky Bet 18+, gambleaware.org. Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Fourth Tier Fever. Welcome to this week's preview show. We look ahead to the latest round of fixtures. And as you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, we're joined by two people tonight. First of all, a regular in Jake. How are you?
I am great. We've made more signings. Still not got a striker, which is slightly annoying. But football is all right, I suppose.
Look, let's just show your love for Cole Stockton around. We know he's the best thing since sliced bread. Or certainly what you say anyway.
Yeah, I don't ever want to get started. He's honestly so bad.
I hope you're not watching this, Cole, for your sake, or for mine, or even Carl Robinson for that matter. But we're also joined tonight by a guest as well. We know that we've been wanting to get more guests on, and we've got one tonight. Sam Jordan, Crawley Town fan. Sam, first of all, thanks for coming on. Somewhat late notice I put in that chat earlier, but how are you? How's things?
It's not match day, so I'm absolutely fine. When it comes to match day this season, it's not very good at the moment.
I can't imagine it is, especially going back to the first day of the season. I know I've mentioned a couple of times about I'd probably say Crawley were one of the worst teams I've seen come to Blundell Park in a little bit, but but that's we'll get into that. But before we do start, of course, if we do all the usual stuff, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you're new around here, download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And of course, thank you to Sky Bet for sponsoring this podcast as always. All right, then, Sam, let's start things. Obviously, Crawley back in League Two. Had a spell in League One last year, just for 1 year after the heroics of the previous season under Scott Lindsey. Everyone and their dog tipped Crawley to go down. You looked like they were the dead certs to drop out of League Two, and they sort of did the unthinkable in a way and got promoted via the playoffs in a quite astonishing circumstances. But unfortunately, that spell was only lasted for a year in League One before relegation last season. You're back in League Two now. Scott Lindsey's back there after a brief spell at a fake club. Looks like it's been a summer of change over at Crawley. A load of players going in and out, and of course under new ownership as well. How do you think it's been?
Yeah, very poor start. If we don't get a point on Saturday, it'll be our worst start ever in our EFL history. So it has been a very poor start. I think when we came to you boys in the opening day of the season, that's probably our worst performance I've seen in at least 2 or 3 years. Literally men against boys, didn't compete at all. And Grimsby were good, but we were really, really poor. Then we had a home game against Newport. We were better, but just didn't take our chances, lost that. Go to Swansea, a little bit better, Swansea Championship team as well. So you're going to expect a tougher opponent. But again, weren't really in the game for that much of it and lost that. Then we went to Crewe, albeit Crewe up there as well, like Grimsby are. But again, didn't really do much to the last 20 minutes, lost there. Then we faced MK at home, and the game was a cracker. It was only 1-1, but the game was a cracker for the neutral, end-to-end. Both teams going for the win. You can definitely tell MK will be up there. And it brought a bit of optimism, really. Not only our first point, but our first decent performance of the season. We thought, here we go. Tranmere at home on Saturday, going to be our first win. Absolutely battered them first half. Should have been 2 or 3-0 up, and then they come out second half, and they've got big, strong lads. They can bring on Turnbull, obviously, was at Salford, wasn't he? Just to see out the game. Jason Lowe to see out the game. And they nicked a goal from a corner, and then we tried to go for it, but then another mistake at the back, and they get a second. It's game over. So, yeah, a very poor start. And interestingly, you're right what you said, Jordan, about being the bookies' favourites to go down. We have been for the last 3 seasons. This season we're not, but we're looking bleak at the bottom. But maybe that's the pressure amongst the squad and the players. That they brought on themselves, because it was the owners at the time and Scott, the manager, who said, look, it's going to be an exciting season. Buckle up was one of the phrases used, but we're definitely buckling up at the other end of the tail at the moment.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like a typical Scott Lindsey phrase. I know it's been someone that's been hardly thought of, and Luke might have other opinions, but what do you sort of put this start down to? I know we've mentioned a few times on this podcast about player turnover and how you've seen for the past couple of seasons, it's pretty much been a completely different squad every time. Is that maybe something that plays a part, or is there maybe something else to that?
No, I think definitely. I think Scott has mentioned actually in the last few weeks how he wants some stability, not every window, loads of outs and loads of ins, because you just don't get that stability. And I think the previous ownership group kind of like finding gems in non-league and then selling them on. Look at the Courier Dyers, the Lawlesses, who are now competing in League One. And we've kind of done similar this window. Rushing Epper Murphy's gone to MK, Will Swan's gone to Bradford, Junior Quintero's gone to Wickham. Kind of done a similar and brought in players who Scott Newham McCurdy, Scott New Reese Brown, but they just haven't gelled really, and we've been missing some wing backs. We haven't got a goal scorer. We signed Shamanga, who has been around at Swindon and Peterborough, but he just can't put the ball in the back of the net at the moment. He scored at Swansea, a bit of a fortuitous goal, and I thought that might be the start of him banging the goals in, but it hasn't been. So yeah, I think the team have struggled to gel. It was interesting after the Tranmere game. Scott mentioned that our whole starting 11 had 498 appearances amongst them in the Football League, and Tranmere had over 2,000. And I'd be intrigued to know whether Scott worked that out just before the post-match press conference, or whether he had it as an excuse lined up before the game, worried we might not get a result. But that's definitely a testament to how inexperienced we are. Albeit on the flip side, when we got promoted in the playoffs, we had the likes of Lolos and Courier Dye, who didn't have many EFL experiences either, and were key parts of that team. So, yes, I think Scott's not happy, you can tell that, and I do wonder if he's being backed as he was promised when he came back, because you look at some of the signings. We signed Ben Rama on loan from, or I'm not sure how to pronounce it, I'm going to call him Ben Rama, it's not the Brentford Ben Rama, but Ben Rama on loan for Burton, who hasn't kicked the ball in 2 years, and you just think, is that really what we're signing when we're looking for experience? So yeah, I'm a bit worried about Scott's post-match press conference on Saturday, the comments about experienced players, and then the lack of signings in the window. Look, obviously you boys are signing players today, and we kind of haven't really strengthened much yet this week with the window looming shut. So yeah, I'm a bit nervous. I think we'll be fine, because I think Scott's a fantastic manager. I think we'll have enough to stay up. It's just it could be squeaky bum time for a while, especially with our fixtures now. Chesterfield away Saturday, then we go to Harrogate, it's not an easy place, and then we face Cheltenham at home. Our next home game, we're rock bottom. That could be a 6-pointer already.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be a big game. Chesterfield have started really well, and so have Harrogate to an extent. But no, I can see what you're saying. I think with some of the signings that you have made, you could certainly see risk. I know you've mentioned about the loan player you got, but I think the one that stood out to me instantly, I think when he signed him, was Reece Brown, was it? Who played football for a large period of time.
Didn't play at all last season.
Yeah, and that was sort of the one that really struck me, actually. There's maybe a couple. I think you maybe look at Harry McCurdy as well, maybe trying to settle down. I know he's had his issues away with, in terms, I think he had like a heart issue or something like that. And just a couple like that. I know, and obviously the high turnover of players. Like I know I've noticed Toby Malaki's gone as well. Someone I didn't really rate during our time at Grimsby, but I mean, you can't have them all. I mean, Danilo Walsall proved to be a great success for you. As much so that he wasn't here. But certainly, Jay, was just come to you. What have you sort of made of Crawley so far? 5 games in. What are sort of your overriding thoughts?
Yeah, it definitely started slower than expected. You expected Scott Lindsey to hit the ground running a little bit, but high turnover of players. Some of their signings, like Sam touched on, they're missing a goal scorer. They've not scored in 3 of their 5 games. So once they get that, it's going to be a big week. So if they get in a goal scorer, then they could climb the table.
Okay. Sam, if I ask you as well about his stint in League One, if I may, obviously it was quite an interesting season, I think. I think you started the season off pretty well, didn't you? And obviously there's been a couple of parts of that. Scott Lindsey leaving and bloke from Gates that came in. I've forgotten his name. Is it Rob Elliott?
Rob Elliott. Yeah, he used to be the Newcastle
yeah.
goalkeeper. Yeah.
Yeah. His spell didn't go great, and of course you got Scott Lindsey back to near the end of the season, picked up a few results, but unfortunately too little, too late. What do you sort of make of that, and especially in terms of maybe the quality as well? Because I expected it was always going to be an uphill struggle, I guess, to maybe try and survive. I don't know. Maybe you saw it differently.
Well, when our first two games, and we all got pretty excited, to be honest. Wow, with 6 points in our first two League One games, here we go. And then we kind of tailed off a bit. Scott left just after the window shut, and I don't think he was too happy with the turnover of players, and the incomings even obviously went to MK. Rob Elliott came in. It was an interesting appointment. He was sporting director at Gateshead, then took over as caretaker manager. No previous management experience. Obviously, has a good stint as a professional footballer, but kind of very different manager to Scott. I think kind of Rob was probably approached for a League One job and kind of thought, I'll give it a bash. I don't think Rob's overly keen on being a manager, but couldn't really turn down the opportunity. He came in and didn't do very well, to be honest with you. We won at Charlton on a Tuesday night, which was fantastic. Probably the highlight of the season. Obviously, they then went on to win promotion after that. And then obviously Rob, we lost 3-1 at Huddersfield in March, and Rob got let go. And then Scott came in, and I'll tell the story quite a lot. We actually won our first two games, won our first two games, won our last three games, but only won 7 of the 41 in between. We win 7 out of 41 games, never going to stay up. But I think had Scott joined a couple of weeks earlier, bear in mind we went down by 1 point, I think we could be, I might not be on this podcast, I could be on League One podcast. So, really disappointed, really. And Scott left, obviously, wasn't really happy with what's happening. Come back under new ownership now, so hopefully he's going to get what he was promised. But yeah, Scott got us there. I think Scott would have definitely kept us there. Rob was the wrong appointment. And apart from Scott, the previous ownership group, every single manager they appointed didn't work out. So, but they got Scott right. And hopefully Scott will be one to get it right this season. We had lots of players last year who probably weren't up to League One standard. Look at Toby Malarkey, would be a good average League Two player like he obviously was for you guys, and then obviously now at Fleetwood, but probably not a League One player and played a lot of games. We got promoted and we weren't ready. We weren't ready for League One. There's others, like Stockport and Wrexham, and when they went up, they were ready, and even Mansfield were ready, but we weren't ready. And you could argue it's because we had late surge into playoffs and just got there, but we didn't strengthen enough in the window. We let players go, like, why are you letting Liam Kelly go to MK? Why are you letting Dia Horsley go to Burton when you want those sort of players in League One? So we kind of had to start again, and the caliber players that came in weren't up to it, really. And we did deserve to go down, albeit it's just so frustrating because we kept Scott, as I say, I think we probably would have stayed up.
Yeah, I can certainly probably get behind that in terms of players. I question if Toby Malarkey was ever League Two standard, and maybe in the right system. Maybe. I mean, it was the afternoon we drew 5-5 with Notts County. Jody Jones got 4 assists, and it was every time it was Toby Malarkey's side. You say I was far from pleased from that day, but it was interesting to see when he signed Toby Malarkey that day as well. I know this is going a bit of a Grimsby tangent here. When he signed Toby Malarkey as well, I was more surprised to see Gav Holohan rock up there, if I was going to be honest, because near the back end of that season, it was very unlikely he was going to stick around. It looked like he was on the decline a little bit with his age, and it was sort of catching up a little bit, and he just didn't quite feel right in Artel's system. I fully expected him to drop into the National League, probably Hartlepool, a return there. I felt looked pretty nailed on. So for him to rock up at League One, I think certainly took us by surprise a little bit. I can't lie about that. But I guess that's sort of maybe the model that you sort of go down, maybe give these players that maybe not really had the best of times. I love Gav to bits. He gave us some great moments. But to see him rock up in League One was a sight, I'll be honest.
Yeah, we used a very data model driven approach to recruitment then. And obviously after we signed Horsey from you guys, anyone we signed from you guys were like, let's give him a chance. Toby kind of played in the back three, so did okay. He wasn't ever a standout player, but was kind of solid at making any mistakes. But I'd be intrigued to see him in the back two or playing right back. I'm not too sure that would fit his style of play. But yeah, when Gav didn't play hardly at all last season, and was definitely not unhappy under Rob Elliott. You kind of see that was in the stands most games. And then it was Scott who signed him, but didn't necessarily play him loads either before he left. And then when Scott came back, I think he started every game. At the end of the season, really well, probably one of our better players. And then kind of started our first few games and was actually rested for the Carabao Cup game where Swansea came off the bench and got a straight red card and now banned for 3 games. I don't think it was a red card. I think it was one of those which is between a yellow and a red, but the angle I had from behind the goal, I haven't seen it back on footage. I think it was a yellow. But yeah, I don't think Gav's our answer. I think he works hard and gets about the pitch and is probably a bit of a leader. But I don't think he's the answer to us. But let's see. He's aging now, isn't he? 32, 33, I think.
I think he's probably slightly older now, yeah. Because we had him as like a 32, 33-year-old.
But you mentioned Reece Brown earlier. Reece Brown started the first few games, and I think he was training with the squad at the back end of last season. So I think he's been in and around the squad, albeit like he said, hasn't played for a while. But he hasn't set the world light and has been dropped for the last few games. So being to see when he comes back in. Harry McCurdy actually started the season playing wing back, well out of position, just wasn't cutting it. But I don't think that's his fault. It's because of lack of wing backs. He's actually played the last couple of games as number 10 and has been a real threat and had a real few chances. I think actually if we can keep him fit and give him service, I think he'll definitely score a few goals. There's actually, I don't know if it's been on the highlights reel, but there was a great shot of him hitting a shot. It was one of those shots where it's going to go in. This Tranmere defender head comes out of nowhere and heads it clear, and everyone in the stadium couldn't believe it. I remember standing up celebrating. I was like, oh, it hasn't gone in. So I think Harry will come good, and he's a great character. There was a moment on Saturday where he got a little push and he just threw himself to the floor like a salmon falling on the floor. It was fantastic. But yeah. It'll be interesting to see if we've got enough this year. I'm not sure. I actually think it'll be this year the Salford's year. I just think Salford have gone about their business quietly this year. Obviously, the class 92 have stepped back, still involved, but I really like Carl Robinson's manager. I've kind of followed his journey, and you've obviously got Alex Bruce there as well, and some of the signs they made. And I think lots of people talking about other teams, and obviously Grimsby and Crewe have started well, and Gillingham are out there, but Salford every year just kind of, you think they're going to get there, and they don't get there. And I think this year, it's going to be their year. I just think they've done good business, and because there's not real focus on them, because there has been so many seasons now, I think it's their time.
Jake, anything to say for that?
Yeah, as long as we get a striker, and I completely agree. But at the minute, we've got two strikers who they're trying. Well, one trying, Stockton isn't really trying, but we just need someone who can get 20 goals. Because Stockton got 16 last year, but I think any League Two quality striker could have got the amount of goals he got last year. None of them were particularly worldies like you expect from him. So if we get a striker in, potentially we could be up there.
Lovely stuff. I know you were just touching on it as well, with Salford and Grimsby, but have you noticed anything different about the league? You know, is there any other teams you probably look at and think, right, okay, they might do well, or maybe there's other teams that you're thinking, right, okay, they might be in for a bit of a tricky season, or anything like that?
I'm quite surprised Cheltenham are down there, bottom with no points. I think when was the last time the team didn't get a point in their first 5 games? And they've got an experienced manager as well, to be fair. Bristol Rovers haven't started that well. Obviously, they returned Darryl Clark, and they're struggling down the bottom. I was quite impressed with Tranmere, actually. Obviously, undefeated in their first 3 games, then come to Crawley. They're big, strong, organised. And I was quite surprised by them. I wouldn't be surprised they're there or thereabouts. I thought Grimsby were really good in the opening day. Albeit we were really poor, but I thought Grimsby were really good. Crewe as well. Obviously, kind of last season after the playoff defeat to us the previous season, didn't really do much, but obviously won their first 4. I think Gillingham have got their recruitment spot on now. I think there's been lots of turmoil at Gillingham last few years, managers in and out, players in and out, but they've started well. I think it'll be really tight this year. I think it'll be really tight for the top 3, and I think it'll be really tight for playoffs. And I can't really put my finger on who will go down. You've got obviously the Cheltenham and Newport counties down now, but Cheltenham obviously going through an ownership change. So whether that will happen before the window shuts and then get more players or not, I don't know. But they might be able to strengthen in January. Newport always seem to just get out of it. As the Harrogate, Accrington, is it their year to fall? As long as there's 2 teams worse than Crawley, I don't mind.
I mean, considering what I've seen Grimsby come up against so far, I'm not too sure, but I guess it's somewhat still early days. I look at the games. I do look at the games that we have played, and I think we've genuinely been a better team in all of them. Probably there's certain ways that we've won games. I mean, Crawley 3-0. I think that probably flattered us a little bit. There was an opportunity to win by more. Shrewsbury, we could have won by more in the cup. Newport look like the Newport of old, as I mentioned in the other week. They look like they've got, they're more defensively sound again. They had a bit of an experimental year last year and very nearly didn't work out. Who else have we played? Harrogate. They're just Harrogate. We never beat them anyway. But we did well in the end to claw back and get a point from that. Walsall was a different test, but one I thought we were pretty good at, and got a good win there. And Accrington, who just played at the weekend, I think if they probably stick to what they do and stick with how they play, they'll be fine, albeit uninspiring. But they'll be enough. They'll get them enough to get them over the line, I'm sure. with some of the
And I
players
mean,
we've got.
Aki have signed Paddy Madden, haven't they? So,
Yeah.
albeit starting to get the wrong side of 30, but he can put the ball in the back of the net. Another team I didn't mention was Chesterfield. Got our old centre half at the back, Carmen Vadzine, who's 38 now, but he's a warrior. And Ronan Darcy. I don't know if anyone saw the goal at the weekend against Harrogate, where he kind of put all their back four on the deck, but he was a top player for us. Not really spoken about much when you look at the Lawlesses, the Courier Dyers, Liam Kelly's, Daniel Lawsey, but he was a big player for us. So I think Chesterfield will definitely be up there. And obviously Walsall on Aidan Flint, he came out of nowhere, didn't he? Big, tall, experienced centre half. So it'll be interesting to see how fit he can keep. But yeah, there's lots of good teams this year, and it's always tough in League Two. Kind of when you're in League One and you go away from home, you're like, take a point, always take a point. But even in League Two this year, you think, oh, Chesterfield this weekend, that's tough. Harrogate, that's our place to go. There isn't many easy games, especially when you haven't started well. When you're Grimsby or Salford and started well, you kind of look forward to the games, don't you? But not if you're on the other end of those results.
And like tomorrow night, we've got a game against Manchester United, in which they're probably going to whack out a very strong team worth hundreds of millions of pounds. They're probably going to start their new £75 million striker. We might get battered, but it'll be a good test to see where we are. Although, albeit, I'm not expecting much from that. It's a stab at the dark. It'll be an occasion for that. Hopefully, we'll try and take with both hands and see if we can get the most out of it as we can. I know you've mentioned about a couple of stuff. We'll move on in a minute, but you mentioned Courier Dye. I really want to point this out. Every time I've seen him play us, he looks like he's clearly a very good goalkeeper. As you've seen, obviously now he's gone to Stockport and has done pretty well over there. But every time I've seen him play, especially against Town, it's probably his place. Like he just looks so out of his depth every time. I remember the 1-1 draw we played a couple years ago now. It was the year before you went up. And he looked like he was going to make a mistake every time he got the ball. He was just that sort of player, but he's obviously got very good with his feet, and we saw it in the promotion season as well. It was like he was by far and away the best goalkeeper with the ball, which shocked me, just on the evidence that I did see. But like I said, he's clearly done very well for himself.
He didn't start great in his first season with us. And actually, I remember an incident after a home game where he kind of had a bit of an argument with a fan. And it was a season we just stayed up. And I was thinking he was kind of finding his feet in professional football, but definitely had a mistake in him. And then the second season, I think what helped him was the way we play football. It's all about on the deck. And I don't know if you remember the footage from the NK Dons playoff game where he was kind of playing right back for most of the home game. So I think that kind of helps him. He's not the best shot stopper in the world, but his height massively helps him. And his ability on the ball helps him. And I was quite surprised when he went to Stockport, actually, because Stockport don't typically pay a nice style of football like Crawley or Swansea. And so I was actually quite surprised. But he's kept Ben Hinchcliffe out of the team, and he's done really well for himself. And it was interesting. I remember watching the playoff second leg in League One last year, and obviously Stockport went to penalties. I remember sitting there saying, Corey's going to save some, so big, and he didn't get near any of them. And I was quite surprised about that, actually, because of his height. But he's done really well for himself, and I think he's got a few suitors. I think he's highly rated just because of his age and his ability. And actually, if you look at James Trafford's mistake for Man City, even the best goalkeepers are making those sort of mistakes. And I'm not saying he's going to make the Premier League Courier Dye, but I can definitely see him playing in the Championship. But yeah, when he started with us, a lot of fans didn't like him, and it actually took a lot for him to turn our minds round. But he was actually really an 11th outfield player for us a lot of the time. Which helped us in getting us promoted.
Yeah, well, in James Trafford's case, he'll just get replaced with Donnarumma. But by the sounds of things, poor lad. Right, we'll move on in a minute. Thanks for that. I know we was talking about teams, but I'll come to Jake as well. I know we sort of mentioned it. 5 games gone now. What sort of caught your eye most with Salford in those games?
Our defence, because last year we conceded so many poor goals, which we only seen that so far on the opening day. Obviously, we conceded one on the weekend through an unmarked corner, which was shades of last season when we let Kyle Hovland do that from no reason at all, which was very painful. But we've started stronger than I expected. We had some difficult games on paper in Notts County where you never know how they're going to do. And we just looked a little bit fearless at times, which is a nice change for the team, which occasionally sits back and just waits for the pressure. So I'm quite pleased.
And you've boosted that defence even more as well. So Brandon Cooper signing today, and you brought in Michael Rose a few days ago. He's got a vast amount of championship experience, and actually he picked up some good wins. I remember watching the Notts County game and being particularly pleased. I wouldn't say massively impressive, but it was a good win. I think it was more because of Notts were poor, but it was still a good win nonetheless, and you took your moments where it came.
Yeah, for sure. We looked pretty good in that game. We signed Michael Rose on a 3-year deal, which I couldn't tell you the last time we signed someone on a 3-year deal, which caught me off guard, because someone of that pedigree who's played all those championship games coming to League Two, you think maybe a 1-year deal, 2-year, if you're lucky, to get on 3 years, pretty crazy.
I guess that's where the ambitions lie with Salford. Did really expect him to kick on this year, and I know you've mentioned it, Sam, but I really do see it this year. But we're still talking early days, of course. I like to think the same with Grimsby, of course. New signing in the door today with Clark Adore. Sounds like we signed him as a midfielder. Over then a left back. We didn't really need a left back anyway, but he can play there. I guess he can play left mid as well. He's a half decent versatile option. I'm not sure how many games he'll play though, because our midfielder's pretty stacked at the minute. But certainly a good player there in terms of cover that we could slot in there. Look, it's not going too bad. Thanks for that.
To celebrate the start of the new season, the Fourth Tier Fever podcast has teamed up with Sky Bet to celebrate the world's wildest emotional rollercoaster, being a football fan. Sky Bet understands the beautiful chaos of being a football fan. It'll lift you up, it'll break you down, and it'll stitch you back together again with those little bits of hope. Because for all the pain of a looming relegation or missed penalty, there's nothing quite like the absolute scenes after a last-minute winner that leaves you hugging people you've never met in your life. For me, we've had relegations out of the Football League and we've had demotions in our time, but I'd happily go through that again just to relive those unbelievable high memories of back-to-back promotions at the home of English football, although I hope we don't get relegated anytime soon. Being a fan isn't for everyone. Some people say it's just a game and question why we shout at the TV or standing in the pouring rain just to see our team lose 1-0. But to those who get it, there's nothing quite like it. The highs, the lows, the heartache and the glory, it's all part of the ride. And is it worth it? You bet it is. Not for everyone. For the fans. Sky Bet. 18 plus. BeGambleAware.org.
Let's move on to this week's fan feature, of course, with Sky Bet. Of course, if you're new around here, this is the part of the show in which we're just going to have a small chat just about anything that we really want in League Two. I know we did bookies odds recently about the league. I know last week we talked about VAR and our opinions on that. If we ever wanted to see that in League Two, you can be sure to go and check that out to see what me and Jake said on that one, because we was on that one. This week, let's talk about a little bit more relating to League Two. Of course, it is the sack race. Of course, it's never really nice to see any manager lose their jobs. But I think 5 games in, I think you're probably starting to paint a little bit more of a picture. As we've mentioned, Cheltenham currently 5 points at the bottom of the 5 games played at the bottom of the table, picking up 0 points. They'd have loved to be on 5 points, as I mentioned there in a minute. Shrewsbury massively struggling. Of course, Crawley yet to get off the mark, but I think it runs a little bit more than just get rid of Scott Lindsey. Accrington picked up 2 points, but played a game less. And I think probably at the minute, I think as you probably put good money on either Cheltenham or Shrewsbury to part ways with their manager with how poor that they've started the season. I know I mentioned about Cheltenham the other day. There's a lot of questions. I think there needs to be answers there, and I think they've got the last few days of the window. I can see them being pretty busy now. I'm not sure if that was a distraction. Maybe I think there was maybe a little bit of help from higher up at Cheltenham, but I think they might start to kick into gear now. I think they need to. I just see it being a big week for that, both ins and outs. As for Shrewsbury, like I said, I'm not really sure if getting rid of Appleton really is the answer. But I can't imagine he's running. I can't imagine he's high on the fan base's estimations either after picking up 1 point. And Shrewsbury do look poor. That was the thing about it. I thought Crawley were poor, but Shrewsbury, at least you could sort of have to see what maybe Crawley were doing at times, albeit they really weren't great. Shrewsbury, I had absolutely no idea. Can you see any of those two going like in the imminent future or immediate future, or is there maybe anyone else that you probably do look out for? Maybe right, okay, if they don't pick up, maybe they might be gone soon. I don't know. It's just your thoughts.
Yeah, I can see Shrewsbury changing because obviously Michael Appleton came in and they were by far going to go down, so he couldn't really do much. But then they started so poor. Obviously, I know some of their fans are putting pressure on their ownership. But even if that is a problem, getting 1 point from your first 5 games as a newly relegated side is just asking for trouble. And like you say, they look very, very, very poor. You don't know what they're going to do. So I can't see that being a happy place to be.
Sam, what about you?
Yeah, I think on Shrewsbury, I think Gareth Ainsworth is quite a loyal manager wherever he's been, and I think for him to leave Shrewsbury in League One, albeit struggling, to go to League Two Gillingham, bear in mind Shrewsbury and Gillingham have been in the same league. There's also a lot going on behind the scenes there. It doesn't stack up, especially now that it's appointed experienced manager Mark Atherton down the bottom. So I think you're right, Jordan, what you said earlier. I don't think it's necessarily down to Michael Atherton, but will the owners pull the trigger on Michael just to kind of apportion blame to him? Wouldn't surprise me. And then Cheltenham, obviously, if they change ownership group, we've seen Morecambe obviously change ownership group, and they got rid of Derek Harrison within an hour of the announcement. So could Cheltenham do the same thing? Cheltenham didn't set the world on light last season either. The other one I keep an eye on is ex-Crawley player Matt Sadler at Walsall. Obviously, absolute nosedive second half of last season. They haven't started too bad this season, but you're kind of probably thinking the boardroom have said during the summer, they're right, let's give them 15, 20 games, see where we are. So I'm keeping a close eye on that one, see where they are kind of come October, November time, ahead of the festive period to see how happy they are with him. And I think it's good they stay loyal, actually, because typically you see teams who fall out of automatics and don't succeed in playoffs. They change managers. Fair play to Walsall for staying loyal, but how long will they stay loyal for? I'm not too sure, but I think they're probably the 3 teams that I'm keeping a close eye on. I can't imagine Crawley Town sacking Scott Lindsey. Well, I'm not saying never, but 3-year deal, probably decent money. Kind of the fans will give him a lot of time as well after what he's done for us.
He's got a lot of goodwill as well, I'd imagine as well.
Got a lot of tokens in the bank, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. After Saturday, you could tell when we went 2-0 down, lots of fans were unhappy, but at the end of the game, kind of all those fans who probably would have stayed before and kind of criticised the players are gone. They're left, and I kind of looked behind the goal where the most vociferous fans are and kind of went, they've left out of respect in a way. They kind of don't want to stand there and kind of air their views to Scott because they kind of respect him that much and they've gone. But I can imagine in a few games' time, if we haven't got any wins on the board, that might change. So, yeah, Scott's definitely got the tokens in the bank. And considering the new owners bought Scott back, I can't imagine they're going to pull the trigger that soon. So I think he's definitely got a few months in him for sure. And hopefully he gets the back in the window, like we said, and he can turn it around.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think I sort of do get the same impression with maybe what we had with Paul Hurst a few years ago. Of course, we ended up pulling a trigger on him in late October, but we wanted to try and give it as much time as possible for him to try and turn it around because, albeit it's been slow at times for him, he did eventually try and do it to a certain extent, but we sort of just felt that this was just going to be one too many. I think, and I remember that defeat to Crawley in particular. There was a lot of games around that time in which he probably looked at it and sort of went, yeah, maybe a change could be on the cards. And that Crawley game, I think, was really the start of it. The one we lost 3-2 at Blundell Park. Danilo Orsi scored in the last minute when we were 2-0 up in that game. We were cruising that game as well, from what I remember. And then just a bunch of other results came. Like we lost pretty poorly to Accrington. We just about lost to Stockport. There was a different animal at that time now. So wasn't really much shame in that. Colchester, we lost that one. You sort of felt it was pretty much near the end of that because they were struggling at the time. And then Doncaster, after that, lost 1-0. Again, they were struggling for a large part of that season. And that just proved to be one too many. And there's been times, like I think I've mentioned on the pod a few times, there's been times in which we could have sacked David Artell much earlier, especially in that run for the first few months we've had. But it's one that we stuck by him, and he's ended up reaping the rewards from it. And certainly we have. And we're very good at doing that. We're good at giving managers time. So, I mean, it's nothing on David Artell. I think his job is safe for quite a long time, actually, at the minute, with where we're going. But, yeah, it's interesting to see. I think there's maybe other thoughts he maybe had in terms of this. I think the one I was always looking at was Crewe. Of course, they started the season like a house on fire. I think it was unfortunate to lose to Gillingham the other day. But it was one that I don't think their fall off got talked about in much because of how bad Walsall's were. I think both of them especially Walsall with Matt Sad there. I think he was quite fortunate to keep his job. But in terms of how Crewe fell off near the end, I think they sort of knew that I think Lee Bell had it in him. And maybe they've just gone and stuck with that and give him another year, see how they do. But it still felt like me like a little bit of a make or break year. It's not necessarily a sense of, right, okay, we need to go up or anything like that. But it was just how they tailed off or how good they were for the first half of the season. They were similar to Walsall in that retrospect.
Yeah, I mean, Lindsey mentioned something about Lee Bell before we played Crewe around the fact that Crewe typically always stay loyal to their managers, don't they? And actually, I think Crewe's squad's probably better this season than it was in the season they made the playoffs. And they definitely look good against us. That Tommy O'Reilly on loan from Aston Villa, he's a top player, and I'm surprised no one from League One actually tried to get him on loan. But yeah, I think Crewe stay loyal to their managers. And I think actually, if you look at likes of Mansfield and Stockport, who stay loyal to their manager, Nigel Clough, and I forget the name of the Stockport manager, but they've done well, haven't they? They got promoted. So, and obviously Salford's stuck with Carl Robinson, probably Salford's longest serving manager, isn't he, under the class '92, and the amount they've gone through. I always think about Salford when the likes of Graham Alexandra get promoted. And obviously the guy later on, Richie Wellens, when he got promoted, I always think about Salford and wonder if they stuck with their managers, would they have got promoted? You never know, do you?
No. When does Ian Holloway resign, like he did with us, probably after 7 days after posting on Twitter that when he does? Wow. What do you think about Holloway? I know we sort of mentioned it. Bit of a loose cannon at times as well. I'm going to keep my opinions to one side as to my opinions of the bloke, but I won't be surprised if there is. It depends how they do. I know that you mentioned the other day about how they've lost Harry Smith and how much of a big blow that will be, especially how he plays. But you can never trust someone like Holloway ever. With sort of his reputation and history, but this is by no means a dig at him. He's done a tremendous job up to date now with Swindon, but it's sort of it's just him, isn't it? I don't know what you think with him, but
yeah, it's one to keep an eye on because some of the things he's saying are getting the fan base with some questions on him. So if they lose a few games in a row, there will be some heavy questions on him. And it wouldn't surprise me if he, like he did with Grimsby, just left. But I think as long as he keeps the results all right, he'll keep the majority of the fan base on side to just keep pushing.
I'm looking forward to more comments now from Swindon fans. I'm sure I'm in high regard with their supporters anyway. I just wish we wasn't absolutely torn apart by Ian Holloway in both games last season. Like, what was it? We lost 3-1 at their place, and we lost 4-0 near the back end of the season in a game that pretty much cost us a spot at the playoffs near. Well, it was one of the games. I won't say that was the sole reason, but we got schooled by him, which was a shame. But I really hope he sticks around for no reason at all. I just want to say hi to him. That's it. Nothing major, but maybe. I don't think he gets sacked to leave by his own accord, but I certainly agree with the. I know we mentioned the Cheltenham and the Shrewsbury one. I think there's certainly two to look out for. Crawley, I agree. I think Scott Lindsey's got a little bit more time. He's got a lot of credit in the bank there. So, unless I see their owners there, but I don't think it'll be a rash decision considering how well he's previously done there. I think it's those two at the minute, and they seem pretty clear with how poorly both of them have started the season. Right, okay, that's sort of that discussion. Let's have a look at the game, shall we? For this midweek, I'm going to be coming up against you this week, Sam, like we did the other week. And neither of us did very well from what I recall. But we're going to have another go. I certainly requested to Jake if he can run down the fixtures again. Don't you play Friday night, Jake?
Yeah, the first game on Friday night is us v Cheltenham. I don't know why it's on a Friday, but for some reason it is.
I mean, it's Friday. It could be worse days. Look, I think you've got it's a potential banana. I feel like there's a potential banana skin for Salford. I know. I think it sort of depends what Cheltenham do in the week, I guess. I know they're playing right now against Cardiff in the cup, but I think this will be a victory for Salford. I think it'll be quite a comfortable one. I'm going to go for a 2-0. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I think 2-1. I think Cheltenham haven't played 3 days before. struggling all the way to Salford on a Friday night. Salford started well, signed some new players this season. Yeah, I think Salford definitely win, but I'll give Cheltenham a goal.
Yeah, like it. Barrow against Fleetwood, which is obviously Pete Wild's returning to Barrow with his new side.
That's an interesting game. That Barrow picked up a good win the other day at Colchester. I know I was on about Colchester starting the season slow, and they have done previous years, especially last year, and then they came to do pretty well. Fleetwood haven't started too bad either. They picked up some half decent results, and the game against Oldham the other day, the 1-1 looks like a bit of an interesting one. Couple of decisions maybe didn't go for either team really. From what I recall from that. In terms of the game, it's at Barrow, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm probably just going to sit on the fence. I think this one I'm going to go for 1-1. So.
Yeah, I think there'll be some goals in this game. I think Pete Wild will bang up for it. It's a bit of a local derby, isn't it? Albeit not that local. But the two teams nearest to each other. I think I'll go 2-2.
The second half-12 kick-off on Saturday is Crewe at home to Swindon.
Oh, that's an interesting game. Obviously, Crewe started the season very well. Lost last time out to Gillingham. Was quite unfortunate. The woodwork like 3 times. As for Swindon, they picked up a good win themselves, albeit it's against Shrewsbury. But still take nothing away from them. Last minute goal, you can't really complain with that. Of course, they'll be without Harry Smith for a while. I say for a while, all season. They'll be after a striker, no doubt. I think that's on their shopping list. I think from what I saw, I think they're signing Ryan Tafazoli, the defender. Used to be at Wickham. That seems like a half decent pickup, one with experience. Probably need someone else, like I said, with a striker. I think Ollie Palmer was in the market. He screams like a very Swindon signing, but it's one that I'm not sure that they can probably compete in terms of the other clubs maybe they mentioned. But he seems like the perfect replacement, actually. Just in terms of stature and whatnot. I'm going on a bit of a tangent. In terms of the game, let's give Crewe a 2-1 win. I think they'll bounce back.
I think Crewe will win as well, but I don't think they'll score lots of goals, so I'm going to go for 1-0.
Yeah, I can see that happening. Barnet against Colchester.
This is a difficult one. Barnet will be on a high because they picked up 2 wins. I think the longer that time went on with them without picking up any sort of results, I think maybe you would have looked at it thinking, right, okay, probably not so much in the sense of, right, okay, they're in trouble here, but it's more of the sense of how long is it going to take before they break their duck. They've finally done that. They've picked up 2 good wins. Colchester, they've started off really so. I know there's been certain like instances as to why there's that. I think I mentioned the other day, I think Ben Perry's out for the season. He's done his ACL now. There seems to be a lot of ACL injuries going around at the minute. With players, I've got to say. I think Barnet will be on a high, but it's also a game that I feel like Colchester are very capable of getting a result. I'm going to go for a narrow 1-0 win for Barnet.
Going to go for a 1-1 draw. I think I've got a lot of time with Danny Cowley and his brother, and I think Barnet will come good, but I think they'll be halted a bit by Colchester at the weekend.
Next game's a difficult one to predict. Bromley against Harrogate.
Bromley against Harrogate. Yeah, both sides have started really well themselves. Bromley are unbeaten. Harrogate did lose the other day, albeit to a very good Chesterfield side, in which Ronan Darcy decided to turn into Lionel Messi, as we discussed. Terrific goal. It depends what sort of Harrogate do. They like to go to these sort of places and sort of shut up shop in a way. They're very good at doing that and clawing something from the game. We know Bromley can be a threat in terms of some of their firepower and how they attack with numbers. Them being at Bromley as well. It's hard to really call, and it's one I'm probably going to sit on the fence again for. Just knowing how Harrogate play and how they like to set up. It might be a tougher test maybe than expected for Bromley to break them down. I don't know. That's the sort of vibe I get from it. I do think both teams will they? No, yeah, I'm going to go for 1-1. After consider, I very nearly went 0-0. But no, we'll stick with the 1-1. I think for that one, I can't call it.
I think 1-0 to Bromley. I think Michael Cheek, obviously, I can't believe he's still there, to be honest. I thought someone would have picked him up. But I just think at home, Harrogate don't take many away fans, do they? And I think Bromley will come good.
Yeah. But I think it's a caveat that, in terms of that, I think if there was going to be a winner, I'd probably go Bromley as well. But I'm still going to stick with the 1-1.
Yeah, Newport, who have just lost the last 3 against fourth if either side, had to get that in. They face Cambridge.
It senses a big game for Newport, actually, as you mentioned, 3 defeats in a row, losing to, of course, FCS sides, losing to Grimsby, Salford, and MK Dons the other day. Paul Kieran. I have no sympathy whatsoever. It's quite funny, actually, because the fact that 3 games have been played and Newport have gone and lost everyone. But you do sense it's a big game for them. Cambridge, I mean, they lost last time. They'll be at Bristol Rovers. They'll be wanted a response. I fancy an away win. I've seen quite a fair enough of Newport to suggest they might be okay this season, and not quite the dog that's set to lay down as probably whatever. That's an awful analogy, but you sort of know where I'm going with that. I've got a feeling that Newport will nick an away win. I'm going to go for 1-0.
Is it at Cambridge or is it at Newport?
I think it's at Cambridge, yeah.
Yeah,
I know Newport hadn't won away
yeah?
for a long time.
Cambridge will win that. I'm going to go 2-0.
I just wanted to get a bold one in there. That was.
I think Neil Harris is a decent gaffer, and I think he hasn't taken that job to do anything other than get promoted. So they've got to start winning at some point.
We could get a bold prediction here. Chesterfield against Crawley.
Not for me, won't.
Yeah, look, Chesterfield picked up a good win last time out. Of course, we should probably mention their owner, actually.
Yeah.
Of course, with Phil Kirk sadly passing away the other day, we do send our thoughts, of course, to the family friends of Phil and for Chesterfield. I think they'll certainly want to make this season certainly one to remember in the sense of a promotion. I think that will certainly what they want to do now. And I'm sure it'll be quite an emotional weekend at their game this week. And of course, they are playing Crawley, again, who have not started the season well, let's be honest. I can't see this being anything other than a comfortable Chesterfield win, if I'm going to be completely honest. I'm going to go for a 3-1 victory for the Spiros.
Yeah, I think also, as you said about Chesterfield's owner, really sad news. And obviously for Crawley fans, it's come at an awful time as well, because they'll be absolutely bang up for it. Absolutely bang up for this game. And I think they've got some fantastic players, Chesterfield. I think Paul Cook's a really good manager, probably at least one division below where he should be. And obviously he came out to Chesterfield to get him back up to League One, didn't he? But Carmen Vadson, Moran Darcy, those other players. I mean, I'm going, and I'll be absolutely buzzing if we get a point. So I'm going to go over 1-1 draw, but I'm not expecting that.
The next game, Grimsby against Bristol Rovers.
9-0 Grimsby Town. That's my vote. No. Look, it's the first time we played Bristol Rovers since that day at Wembley in 2015, and considering the names that they've got there now with Darryl Clark and of course Camille Conte now there, has decided to have a couple of digs at us. Well, mainly the Grimsby Telegraph, as it was back there with the print that you. A certain word beginning with B, you can go and find that out, because I don't really want to swear on this podcast. So there's sort of a sense that it's been long overdue revenge, maybe. I'm not sure how much tomorrow night against Manchester United will take out on the players heading into that game. I know Bristol Rovers are playing tonight. I think they're in the Virtue Motors, so they'll probably be the more ready. I don't know. I think we've got a half decent side squad as it is, and there's a fair bit of rotation, but I think Bristol Rovers, I think they'll be glad that they're now up and running. Picked up a good win last week against Cambridge, and I think they'll be up for it. I think we'll be up for it also. But like I said, I think it's more, let's see what takes out on the players tomorrow against Manchester United. But I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that you can see Bristol Rovers getting a result there and ending our unbeaten start to the season. I don't want to be the pessimist or anything like that, but I don't think we'll win the game either, but I kind of really don't want us to lose. I certainly don't want us to think we'd lose either. So I'd probably just stick with the 1-1, really. I think it goes back to last week where the draw against Accrington just feels like a little bit of a killer. The fact where on paper it looked like a relatively even game, but the fact we've missed a penalty again, and we've missed a sitter really, and for them to go and equalise has really cost us 2 more points, and we could be top of the league, and I could have been going on about it in this podcast again if we ended up winning that game, but I do think we could be in for a pretty tricky afternoon, depending on the circumstances. So I think 1-1 is probably a little bit of a safe bet.
I think it's spot on, Jordan, about what will tomorrow night's game do in terms of taking it out, not necessarily physically, but emotionally, the hype around the game, and obviously day off Thursday, one game to prepare. Bristol Rovers just won, haven't they? Going to bang up for it. I think Bristol Rovers are going to win. I think they'll probably win 1-0. It might be a bit of a smash and grab.
MK Dons v Walsall.
This is an interesting one. Look, MK have started off pretty well. You'd expect them to. I don't care what anyone says. You expect them to with the quality of players that they have in that squad. Of course, I signed John Mellish today as well. I know you said in the chat, Jake, that it seems like a bit of a weird one, and I sort of agree to an extent, but it's still good depth either way because he was playing League One last season. So I think you could do a lot worse than that. I think Walsall, they've had a bit of a mixed bag in terms of results to start the season. I think in terms of what Grimsby have played this season, I think they're by far the best team we've played. You know how they're going to play. They like to get bodies up. They like to hit people on the counter attack. They're pretty decent in transitions. I know they probably do need a couple more players bringing in. I know they've got a striker to replace Johnny Stuttle, who's gone back to Bournemouth, but they probably need another one in terms of their bodies. I think they still need to do a little bit more in terms of transfers. But you can certainly see that they're probably going to be quite strong again. Certainly knocking on the door of the playoffs is probably what I expect, especially on that showing. And of course, they picked up a pretty good win against Salford, which they look like they're the better team quite throughout. I think, again, I won't be surprised if it's a draw, but I think considering MK are at home and just with some of they're just going to be such a tough nut to crack MK this year. I mean, with Paul Warne there, of course, and Callum Patterson has started life to there excellently. Bagged the winner the other day against Newport, and I'm going to go for a 2-0 win to MK Dons.
Yeah, I mean, MK have only conceded 1 goal in the whole season. That was against the mighty Crawley. So
they conceded to Newport the other day as well, so 2. Unfortunately,
I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Before we play, they conceded. I mean, when they play against us, they're a phenomenal team. I felt like watching a League One game, just only one team with a League One team. But yeah, I think MK will definitely win that. I think Walsall might score though. I do think MK like to leave their back four a bit unprotected at times. Liam Kelly sits in front of them, but everyone else goes forward. So I can see it being probably 2-1 to MK.
Oldham v Gillingham.
Now, Oldham really do need to get that win, don't they? I know they've had a couple of draws, which is not terrible, but they do really need to get off the mark in terms of a win. I think it'll sort of give the place a little bit of not to say that there's not really much to pick up from at the minute. I mean, they could have had much worse starts, but I think the quicker you get that monkey off your back in terms of them getting a win as quick as you can, I think the better. But they've got one hell of a task in terms of Gillingham. Unbeaten in 17 now under Gareth Ainsworth, started pretty strong, picked up a very good win against Crewe the other day. It won't be an easy game by any means. I think Oldham might certainly fancy their chances, maybe being at home, that they might take something. I think it'll be quite bold to predict them to win the game. But there's maybe a sense that, they've picked up a few draws. There's maybe a sense they could maybe get another one like Gillingham. I know they have picked up or they do like to draw a few games, but they have started winning games as well by tight score lines. But I mean, that's the sign of good teams, and they just find a way. That's what Gillingham have done at times this season, and they've done it quite well. Can I see them getting a result at Oldham? Yeah, I probably can, but I think they'll be quite up for this one, actually, Oldham. I think with that, I'll probably play it safe. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw again. I think they'll draw again. But I don't think it will necessarily be a bad result for Gillingham, maybe. I don't know. Maybe with their expectations, maybe not. But I think away from home, it's a long way to go. I think you maybe do factor that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think Gillingham will lose yet. I think they will lose, but probably not just yet. And I'll probably... 0-0. Don't often predict 0-0, but I think I'll go 0-0. Gillingham, good defensively. Oldham haven't really been that much of a threat in front of goal yet.
A game which feels potentially big for a relegation battle. Shrewsbury against Accrington.
Does feel big, doesn't it? Obviously, we've talked about Shrewsbury to death. I'm kind of bored of talking about Shrewsbury now in that instance. The proof's in the pudding. They've not started off very well at all. I think there was talks of maybe an interested buyer, maybe. I think the other day. I'm not sure how true that is. I do look at Twitter quite a lot in terms of these things. They're coming up against Accrington. Like I said, I think, like I said at Accrington, I think if they play the way like they did against us this season, you can see them getting enough points to survive. They're very compact. They've got a way of playing there. They're a team that they look well drilled and they're quite hard to beat. And you sort of sense that if they get a few wins under their belt, you suspect they'll be more than fine. I think they will do if they continue to play like that. But again, this feels big for both already, especially for Shrewsbury. I know that Accrington have played a game less. Do I see it changing? I really don't. I really don't hold much confidence in this Shrewsbury team at the minute. I think these next few days in terms of the transfer window will be big, but realistically, what can they do? I think they've mentioned something about how they need to sell before they bring others in. I'm not too sure. I could be way off the mark there. And you know what? I just think they'll lose again. They've just got this downbeat culture at the minute, this negative culture, in which they need to get out of, and they're just not. And they've not given me any confidence with that at the minute to suggest that they will do it. I think Accrington will win. I think they'll win 1-0.
I think Shrewsbury will win 2-1. I think they've got to win at some point. And Accrington's probably the easiest home game they're going to have for a while. So I go Shrewsbury 2-1.
Should probably clear up. I'm not a Shrewsbury hate channel by any means. I'm just going off with what I see. Hello to everyone that's new around here. I should probably mention.
The final game, Tranmere against Notts County.
Yeah, I mean, look, Tranmere started all right. Of course, beat Crawley the other day. And I've talked about how good Amari Patrick is to death, so I won't bore you with that again. Yeah, coming up against Notts, I feel like, again, we've talked about transfer windows. I reckon this week is big for Notts. They're nowhere near done. There's a lot of uncertainty around a number of players. I know that Alexandra Jatta missed the game the other day. Of course, he's back from his suspension now, but he said he missed it with like a back spasm, I think it was, or something like that. There's a couple of players in which there's question marks over their future. Is it Traore, who they brought in January? He's not really had much of a look, and it sounds like he could be going out on loan. Will Jarvis isn't getting a look in. Others like that. I don't know. I think they've picked up a tad recently, but not by much. They've picked up one or two half-decent results. But you sense that they need to do more, because I'm really unconvinced with them at the minute. Tranmere, we get told off for mainly not praising Tranmere enough. I think maybe at times. And like I said, they have started the season well under Andy Crosby. They've got some good players there. I still think they maybe need to do get one or two more, maybe in that squad. But they're scoring quite a few goals as well, and that was my biggest issue with it compared to last year. Is they couldn't hit a barn door at times last year. So it's really pleasing to see them sort of given a new leash of life under Andy Crosby. He's really got in there and done a good job. And a lot of credit does deserve to go his way for it. In terms of the game, I'm not blabbering on a bit about it. In terms of the game, obviously Tranmere at Prenton Park, it's a difficult place for them to go. Difficult place at the best of times. But maybe I don't know. It's a difficult one to look at. And this is I'm not basing this off of anything like that. 2-1 Notts County. That I think Tranmere will lose, actually. I know I've just gone on about how good they are and how much of a difficult time maybe Notts will have, and maybe I'm uncertain about a few things, but I don't know. I've just got this weird feeling that Notts will get a result from this game. I'm not sure. It's just me.
Yeah, I think Notts need to start winning, but I was really impressed by Tranmere, especially second half Saturday, and I think they'll probably continue on unbeaten run, and I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Decent stuff. Jake, just any overriding thoughts from any of those games, just from you? very quickly? I know there's not really much predictions, but any ones that you're sort of looking there thinking, right, okay, they can maybe do something there, maybe if they play the cards right or such?
Yeah, I think Barrow v Fleetwood's an interesting one, like you say, with the Pete Ward factor. Crewe v Swindon will be an interesting because without Harry Smith, tough game for Crewe. Be interested if they can keep it going. Cambridge, Newport, can Newport bounce back from the 3 defeats in a row? And then Oldham and Gillingham, where Oldham is still looking for that first win in Gillingham on that amazing run. There are some good games.
Yeah, and we look forward to keeping a close eye on those with interest. But I think that's all we've got time for this week. Of course, thank you so much for you guys for tuning in. Thank you so much for your support as always. We really do appreciate it. Of course, leave a comment of what you think the scores will be in this game or any thoughts that you've got that we've mentioned in this podcast, good or bad. We're open to your opinions. As always, of course, make sure you hit the like button. Subscribe if you're new around here. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcast from. And of course, thank you to Skybet for sponsoring this podcast. And of course, Sam, thank you so much for joining us again. Like I said, we really do appreciate your time. We'll be keeping a close eye out for Crawley this season, and all the best going forward with that.
Cheers, guys.
No worries. All right, thank you, guys. We'll see you in the next episode, probably on Monday. Or in fact, no, we've got deadline day coming up. We probably are doing another deadline day stream again. I'll probably be involved again. So it'll probably still be Monday where you hear the review of this week's games, but it might be Tuesday. So it's just a little bit of a warning, just in the meantime. But of course, the first place where you'll know when the new podcast drops is you turning on those notifications. So we really do appreciate you doing that. But that's all from me. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode. This has been 4-Tier Fever. Take care for now. Thanks once again to our partners for this episode, Skybet. Skybet understands the beautiful chaos of being a football fan. The highs, the lows, the heartache and the glory. It's all part of the ride. And we wouldn't trade it for anything. Not for everyone, for the fans. Skybet, 18+, gambleaware.org.